Hey gang, we are in Huntsville, Alabama today, and we are at historic Maple Hill Cemetery. Very historic place here. We've been here before. I'm standing in the shadow of the mausoleum, or the vault if you will, of Mary Bibb. We did the story last year of the bride in the rocking chair. Check that out. But we're going to walk to another mausoleum right now, and I'm going to tell you the odd, twisted tale of a man named William Henry Burritt. Really strange character here. The mausoleum has some interesting, well, one very interesting characteristic inside that you're going to want to hear about. I'm just not going to believe this, the story. Just what a strange guy. So let's take a walk to his grave. We think he's in there, his mausoleum. Not sure, and that's another part of the story. So we're going to start the story much earlier, before he was born, and we're going to talk about the ancestors of his wife, because they were the first people here practically. We're going to go back, way back, well, for the United States, 1842, there was a man named Black Bill Robinson. His wife's name was Caroline Penelope. Lots of children. One of the daughters, her name was Mary. Now, Black Bill, he was the sheriff here in Huntsville, starting in 1842. And in 1852, it was discovered that old Black Bill had cancer. So sadly, he passed away on July 9th of that year. He was only in his early 30s. Shortly after his death, his widow Caroline Penelope built a mansion. It was known as Quiet Dale Plantation. Mary would grow up, and in 1866, she would marry a doctor here by the name of Amytas Robbins Burritt. Very well-respected guy, especially as a doctor. One of the things that was written about him, I'll quote, "The chief element of his remarkable success lies probably in what might be called an intuitive perception of disease. He rarely fails in a diagnosis. An intricate case is his delight, and he has unraveled many which have baffled some of the best physicians in the land." Well, they would have two children, a daughter in 1867 named Carrie Boardman, and a son just under 2 years later, a son named William Henry, who we're going to be talking about. And the family was doing really well. Not only was Dad a really good doctor, but he was also a pretty good businessman. And speaking of Mary Bibb, this would be Thomas Bibb. I don't know if we covered this. So, interesting. So the family would become very wealthy, and sadly, on August 23rd of 1876, Dr. Burritt suddenly died. He was 43 years old. Well, life would go on, and as William Henry got older, he started to become peculiar, a little weird. Didn't want to leave the house. He wanted to live with Mom. He wanted to care for Mom. Well, Mary Burritt was getting older now, vulnerable. Maybe a little dementia was setting in. And William was staying close. He wanted to care for her. He could have easily hired someone to do this. They had lots of money. But he had a plan. On his 21st birthday, he had Mom committed to an insane asylum. That was the plan. And then he immediately filed a court order to name himself as the owner of the estate. See you later, Mom. She was gone. She was taken care of. Now he had the money, he had the estate, and now his behavior would really get bizarre and more paranoid. Carolee Pleasance passed away at Walnut Springs, Virginia. Now look at that. It says, not dead but sleepeth. Interesting. Yeah, he would get more and more bizarre and paranoid. People would ask him about him and his family, personal life, and he'd always give fake answers, make stuff up. Never give the same answer twice. Now, he always wanted to be a doctor, just like his father and grandfather, but he kept failing the exam, and that was humiliating. But then William met someone special. It was 1892. Her name was Pearl Bud Johnson. She was the daughter of a Union officer, an officer who was actually just visiting here, a man who participated in the capture of this place, Huntsville, during the second year of the Civil War. He was officer of the garrison that was left here during the Union's occupation. Finally, in 1898, after taking the exam for like the third time or more, William finally passed the doctor's exam. But sadly, within a month of that, his wife Pearl died. She was only 26 or 27. There were whispers. It seemed suspicious. They already were aware, everyone, of his really bizarre behavior. His mom getting taken off the radar screen, if you will, the way he did it. There were church records that listed her death as appendicitis, but her family maintained it was caused by complications from a botched abortion that he tried to do on her. And Pearl's three brothers, they wanted to kill him. But people in the community stopped them. They said, don't do it. So he got away with it if he did it. Now, William never really seemed to practice any medicine, although he was technically a doctor, right? Very odd. But he did get a position with the Bureau of Pensions in 1898, well after the Civil War. His job was to examine the ex-soldiers to see if their claims were justified. So time went on, and touching on William's sister Carrie, she had in the meantime gotten married, her last name now Matthews, and she was also involved in the medical field. Here's some cradle graves. Probably children, right? 1868, yeah. And you can see how tiny these are. So, yeah, Carrie goes, she's in the medical field too, and they're working together. And William sends her to Waco to see some type of medical clinic or something that he's interested in buying. She goes a couple times, comes back, reports in, and she goes another time, and then she flat out just disappears. Really weird. And they're like, investigators are like on him. What happened to her? Well, I don't know. He had something to do with it. And of course, he is going after her assets next. Never explained what happened. But somehow, he was successful in getting her assets. I don't know how it worked, but over the objections of her husband, Albert, he took control of her estate legally. It's hard to believe. But just like you could tattle on somebody and send them to the insane asylum back then, and even up until the 1900s, didn't like somebody in the family, just get them put away on your word. In 1889, he was at his summer home. He had a summer home, and he was treating a woman named Josephine Drummond. She had caught the diphtheria virus, very terrible virus, killed a lot of kids. You hear diphtheria from contaminated well water. Now, Josephine was 20 years older. She was not very attractive, it was said, and rather plump. I'm being diplomatic. She was the heiress to the vast Drummond tobacco fortune. 2 months later, they were engaged to be married, and they would move to Josephine's home. She lived in St. Louis, Missouri, and now William was living the high life. He was socializing with the big St. Louis big shots. They were taking trips all over the world. And he was bragging about all kinds of stuff he was just making up. And if you didn't call him doctor, he would get really mad. He would get really mad, very insecure. He would change the family history. He'd omit the fact that he even had a sister. Said his mother was from a wealthy New York family. He said he was an inventor, claiming to have over 40 patents. He did have patents. He was kind of an inventor, but it was kind of kooky stuff. Kooky stuff that really wasn't worth anything. But he was out to impress people. In 1923, while back in Huntsville, William started to notice the odd behavior of his nephew, Burritt Matthews. So William promptly had him committed to the state institution. And he said, listen to this. His reason for committing him was insanity caused by smoking cigarettes. And what do you think happened next? Well, William seized control of his property, his estate. Well, 1933, Josephine Drummond Burritt has a heart attack, and she dies. So William comes back here to Huntsville in just a few months. He didn't fit in there anyway. He thought he fit in here. And that's when he built this mausoleum here at Maple Hill. We're going to see. It was laid out for 9 bodies. 9 bodies. 2 crypts were for his parents and his first wife, Pearl. Wait a minute, that's 3 people. It is said that, and this is what's interesting about this mausoleum right in front of us, was said that there was a employee of William's that said that William brought him out here after the mausoleum was built and they were interred. And they went inside, and he said inside here the parents were buried in one casket in formaldehyde with a viewing window where you could look at them. in formaldehyde, preserved like pickles, right in here. So we have a marble door. And we have, it says, "He giveth his beloved sleep." Big marble door, marble columns. Now what's interesting here is, I wonder if somebody came with a snake camera. Because there looks like perfect holes here. And people were drilling. Or a bullet hole. Or maybe nothing. Maybe just coincidence. Maybe just wear and tear. Well, William was now getting really weird with this mausoleum thing going. He had always been eccentric and strange, but now he seemed to develop this master-servant complex. He would bring construction workers to his house there, and he would sit under a tree and watch them all day, and he would have them move these stones, but he wouldn't let them use the wheelbarrow. He's like, "No, you can't use the wheelbarrow. You've got to, I want to watch you move them by hand." You know, it's like, I'm the master, you're the servant. Strange. Carry those rocks for me while I watch you. It's in good shape, this mausoleum. Wife number 3 in 1937, William gets remarried. Her name, Alta Jacks. Now he's really weird. He made her a prisoner in her own house. They would live. And then he'd put poisonous snakes in her bed and warn her that the snakes were the guardians of his property. And if you ever try to leave, the snakes will stop you. They'll get you. And she believed him for a while. Finally, she snuck out of there. She got away. In the end, William, his paranoia just went nuts. He was drinking goat's milk from his herd. He became a recluse. He was selling his second wife's jewelry to the pawn shop here. Getting weirder and weirder. Finally, he was 86 years old. He died on April 17th, 1955. What's interesting is that, well, he donated his house, and I think you can go see it here. It's a museum. I'm sure it's got some oddities because, you know, he claimed his bed or something was from the King of Spain, and all these made-up stories of his things that he bought at local shops. But they say there's 9 crypts in here, and when they came to put him in, like in his will, he had no money for his own burial or internment. And when they came to put him in, all the crypts were full. So I don't know if we don't know if he's in here or not. The cemetery records don't really, there's no record of what happened. You know, I'm just standing here thinking, let's think about this. So there's a total of 9 internment spots in there, right? And we know he probably killed his mom, killed his first wife for sure. And he probably, he could have probably killed his sister too, a murderer. So his mom and dad and first wife were supposed to be in here, right? His mom and dad are in one casket and Pearl's in the other, his first wife. That should leave 7 open spots. So they go to bury Dr. William here, and it's full. Doesn't make sense. Now, from what I understand, cemetery records don't show who's in there. Nobody really knows. If somebody knows, leave it in comments. But, you know, if we got 7 unknown bodies in there right now, you gotta wonder. our ancestry helper, Deb, she was musing that crazy Dr. William might have been a serial killer. And I kind of laughed when I heard that, but I started thinking about it, and you know, the 7 in there, if they're in there, it could be murder victims. Can only wonder. I would give anything to go in there. Guys, I know you would too, many of you. I want to see that casket. I want to look in that little window with the flashlight and see what's under the formaldehyde bubbling. The parents, you know they're in there. Is it true? Are they really still preserved in this mausoleum? Well, maybe we just happened to find some old pictures.